Marlon Brando, a name synonymous with cinematic genius, known for unforgettable roles in classics like On the Waterfront, The Godfather, and Apocalypse Now. Crowned actor of the century, Brando's legacy far surpasses his 2 Oscar wins and the iconic performances that reshaped acting forever. He revolutionized Hollywood by championing a naturalistic style, emphasizing the imagination and inner life of his characters, rather than rote memorization of lines and emotions. This approach transformed acting into the deeply immersive craft we recognize today. But this story isn't about his accolades, his fervent political activism, or the controversies that swirled around his personal life. Instead, it delves into the lesser-known, troubled facets of Brando on set. The erratic behavior, the refusal to prepare scripts, bizarre demands, and clashes with cast and crew. The parts often swept under the carpet. From co-stars relying on his cue cards to peculiar costume requests and endless pranks, these anecdotes reveal a complex artist whose career was as dotted with mediocrity as brilliance. Exploring these behind-the-scenes tales and the choices he made exposes a conflicted man struggling with a lack of passion, or perhaps a deep indifference toward his craft at times. Brando's career arcs through 4 distinct phases: his meteoric rise, subsequent decline, a powerful comeback, and finally, a phase marked by blatant disregard for industry norms. His on-set troubles intensified with each chapter, culminating in a nearly unbearable presence by the end. Stay with me until the end. These stories only deepen, shedding light on the reasons behind his puzzling behavior. Before we dive deeper, let's trace Brando's early life to understand the man he became. Born in Omaha, Nebraska in 1924, young Marlon was naturally mischievous, a habitual mimic and prankster. School was a battleground. He flunked all but sports and drama, repeated a grade due to poor conduct, and was eventually expelled. A military academy stint ended abruptly when he was caught sneaking off into town. Though invited back, Brando chose instead to drop out entirely, heading to New York to join his sisters and chase his dream of acting. Acting offered Brando a rare refuge, a realm where he felt truly accepted, finally hearing praise rather than criticism. Under the tutelage of Stella Adler, he mastered the Stanislavski system, a method that emphasizes fully experiencing and embodying one's character from the inside out. This profound technique was what he introduced to Hollywood, despite disliking the method actor label that later clung to him. Launching his theater career in 1944, Brando quickly established himself as a force of nature. His talent undeniable, yet his on-stage behavior unpredictable and often insubordinate. He even faced expulsion from a production, yet his raw ability eclipsed these personal challenges, securing his place as a rising star. This is just the beginning of the tale, a glimpse into the man whose brilliance forever changed acting, but whose demons shadowed his path. The story that follows will uncover how the triumphs and troubles intertwined on and off the set, revealing the true complexities behind the legend of Marlon Brando. In 1944, Brando landed a role in the Broadway play I Remember Mama Died. Though his part was relatively small, there was potential for more, if only he had shown more dedication at the audition by reading his lines. This absence of preparation hinted early on at his disregard for memorizing scripts. Just 2 years later, in 1946, he garnered significant attention, being voted most promising young actor for his performance in Truckline Cafe. His stage presence was undeniable, marked by a unique acting style that, while compelling, made it difficult to replicate the same character portrayal night after night on tour. Critics observed that he seemed to be perpetually in the process of discovering his character rather than fully embodying it, leading some to wonder if his approach suited other mediums better than live theater. Brando's unconventional style also caused friction with fellow actors. On the production of The Eagle Has Two Heads, his co-star Tallulah Bankhead found his unpredictability infuriating. She never knew what he might do next, and his antics, such as scratching himself or picking his nose during live performances, only exacerbated her frustration. Eventually, this led to his dismissal from the play. Yet, this setback opened doors to a defining moment in his career. The 1947 production of A Streetcar Named Desire. Here, he began his fruitful collaboration with director Elia Kazan, who would later helm a number of Brando's early films. Brando's entry into the film world was marked by his 1950 debut in The Men. Portraying a bitter paraplegic veteran, he immersed himself deeply in the role, even spending a month bedridden in a hospital to fully understand the character's experience. His dedication paid off, with critics lauding his powerful performance. The following year, he reprised his theatrical role as Stanley Kowalski in the film adaptation of A Streetcar Named Desire, a performance many consider among his finest, and that earned him a Best Actor Oscar nomination. This was only the beginning of his trilogy of collaborations with Kazan, which also included Viva Zapata and On the Waterfront. For Viva Zapata, released in 1952, Brando went to great lengths to embody the character. He traveled to the Mexican town where Zapata had lived, meticulously studying the local speech patterns, gestures, and mannerisms to bring authenticity to his portrayal. A fun anecdote from the production involves a quirky contest. Brando had to defend his lead role against co-star Anthony Quinn by seeing who could urinate the farthest. Brando won. In 1954, his role in On the Waterfront cemented his status as a cinematic legend. The film is still celebrated today, particularly for the unforgettable "I Could Have Been a Contender" scene. Interestingly, Brando left the screening feeling downhearted, convinced he had failed despite the accolades. Throughout the following years, Brando remained a major box office attraction, though his performances were sometimes uneven. For the 1954 film Desiree, his lack of enthusiasm was palpable, as he was openly disinterested in the script and delivered minimal effort. The next year, Brando starred alongside Frank Sinatra in the musical Guys and Dolls, a pairing fraught with tension. Sinatra candidly labeled Brando the world's most overrated actor and mockingly nicknamed him Mumbles. Despite his limited singing ability, Brando secured the lead role, adding fuel to their rivalry. One memorable behind-the-scenes detail from the film involves Sinatra's character eating cheesecake, a food Sinatra reportedly detested, which Brando was well aware of, often using such knowledge to tease him. Their on-set interactions were marked by an undercurrent of friction, reflecting the clash of two strong personalities. In the early stages of his career, Marlon Brando was already shaking things up with his mischievous streak. On the set of The Young Lions, his love for pranks shone through when he played a terrifying joke on the entire crew. After a tense scene, the director shouted, "Cut!" But Brando stayed face down in a shallow pool of water for over a minute, making everyone think he had drowned, until he finally surfaced with a huge grin, leaving the cast and crew both relieved and amused. Even then, Brando was cutting corners in his own way. Rather than memorizing lines, he sometimes relied on cue cards, hinting at a loosening grip on traditional discipline. But Brando's creative control and rebellious nature would soon lead to major professional setbacks, centered around two notorious films, One-Eyed Jacks and Mutiny on the Bounty. One-Eyed Jacks marked Brando's sole venture into directing, a role he assumed just 2 weeks before filming began, after legendary director Stanley Kubrick unexpectedly stepped down. Brando's takeover wasn't smooth. Many writers were dismissed, fueling speculation about the reasons behind Kubrick's departure. Initially pegged at $2, the film's budget skyrocketed to $6 million, a direct result of Brando's perfectionism behind the camera mirroring his demanding acting style. For example, fixated on capturing the perfect shot of the Pacific Ocean, he waited 2 hours just to capture the ideal wave. This obsessive attention to detail doubled the planned shooting schedule from 3 months to 6. But in spite of his dedication, the movie flopped disastrously, placing Brando on Paramount's blacklist. The infamous production of Mutiny on the Bounty took the chaos even further. Known for his difficult behavior, Brando deliberately sabotaged aspects of the shoot. He may have caused a director change mid-production, manipulated cast and crew for personal gains, and when frustrated, often froze in front of the camera, refusing to perform. His domineering presence and ego eclipsed the already challenging conditions of filming in Tahiti, sending costs through the roof. The film not only flopped at the box office, but nearly bankrupted MGM. Such conduct on a grand scale reminded many of the volatile Klaus Kinski, another actor infamous for his on-set antics. By the mid-1960s, Hollywood's patience with Brando wore thin. No longer a guaranteed box office draw and plagued by a string of flops, studios grew wary of dealing with his erratic behavior. In an unusual move for the star, Brando signed a 5-picture contract with Universal, an attempt to regain stability. However, besides The Ugly American, which received a somewhat positive reception, the films were critical and commercial failures. Brando later referred to this turbulent era as the Foo Years, honest about the pain he felt from harsh criticism and the industry's rejection. His career had hit a serious low. Once the darling of cinema, he now faced near exile from the Hollywood spotlight. Yet, like a phoenix rising, Brando's career was revived through 2 groundbreaking films, The Godfather and Last Tango in Paris. His portrayal of Vito Corleone in The Godfather is now etched as one of the most iconic in cinematic history. Despite initial resistance from Paramount over his casting, Brando's powerhouse performance silenced critics and audiences alike, marking a triumphant return to form and redefining his legacy in Hollywood. Marlon Brando's career faced a significant downturn after a costly financial loss on One-Eyed Jacks, a string of box office flops, and a growing reputation for being difficult on set. During this period, the president of Paramount Pictures was adamant that Brando would not be allowed to star in any films as long as he held that position. Fortunately, the tide began to turn when the president relented, but only under 3 strict conditions. Brando had to accept a reduced salary. He would be financially responsible for any production delays caused by his behavior, and he was required to submit to a screen test. Agreeing to the lower fee, Brando made a concerted effort to maintain professionalism throughout the bulk of filming. Surprisingly, he proved quite supportive of the cast and crew, avoiding much of the controversy that had previously defined his work ethic. An oft-repeated image from this period shows Robert Duvall holding cue cards for Brando, assisting him during scenes due to Brando's notorious habit of skipping line memorization. Yet, in the case of The Godfather, frequent last-minute script changes somewhat excused this behavior, though his fellow actors managed without such aids. Brando's mischievous side also showed up on set. During one scene where he was carried upstairs, he asked prop masters to add weights beneath him, making it more challenging for his co-stars to lift him. Another lighter moment was a spontaneous mooning contest during the wedding scene, initially between James Caan and Duvall, which Brando ultimately won by mooning over 500 extras. These playful antics added an unexpected layer of levity to an otherwise serious production. His performance in The Godfather earned the Best Actor Oscar, which Brando famously declined as a protest against Hollywood's treatment and portrayal of Native Americans. He soon followed this with another powerful, though highly controversial, role in Last Tango in Paris. This film stirred strong reactions, especially over explicit scenes involving butter, yet his portrayal garnered him a Best Actor nomination. On set, cue cards were prominently posted to aid his performance, much to the director Bernardo Bertolucci's creative frustration, who had to ensure they remained out of camera view. Those two critically acclaimed roles rejuvenated Brando's standing in Hollywood, accompanied by both commercial success and renewed artistic prestige. However, his challenging personality and on-set demands resurfaced with increased intensity. In The Missouri Breaks, 1976, under director Arthur Penn's direction, Brando became erratic and uncontrollable. Penn ultimately surrendered directorial control, allowing Brando full freedom to improvise his character. With an inexplicable Irish accent and an eccentric portrayal reminiscent of a flamboyant British aristocrat, his choices left critics unimpressed. The Sun's harsh review depicted Brando at 52 as having the sloppy belly of a 62-year-old, the white hair of a 72-year-old, and the lack of discipline of a precocious 12-year-old. By the time Brando appeared in the 1978 blockbuster Superman, he perhaps reached the peak of his professional indolence. Cast as Jor-El, Superman's father, he commanded a salary of $3.70 million, plus nearly 12% of the film's profits, adding up to an astounding $19 million, equivalent to over $100 million today, for just about 10 minutes of screen time. While his star power undeniably helped the film's box office, the contrast with Christopher Reeve's modest $250,000 paycheck for playing the lead was stark. Despite this lucrative contract, Brando's commitment to the role was minimal, embodying a sense of detachment emblematic of his later career phases. Working with Marlon Brando was famously challenging, and even Christopher Reeve, who co-starred with him, openly expressed his frustration during a talk show interview. Reeve lamented how Brando seemed to just phone it in, showing little enthusiasm or effort, and sadly noted that the press appeared indifferent to whether Brando delivered a strong performance or a lackluster one. This indifference seemed to feed into Brando's own disengagement. Director Richard Donner, however, believed Brando's performance was outstanding despite the difficulties. Brando's role, though only about 10 minutes of screen time, took 12 days to film, a protracted process complicated by Brando's reluctance to leave his trailer. He had a financial incentive to extend filming since he earned more if production went beyond the scheduled days. The crew had to entice him out with food, a small bribe to coax the reluctant star. Once on set, Brando imposed unique demands. He insisted on the use of cue cards off-camera because he refused to read the script beforehand, a condition tied to his acceptance of the role. In one of the more eccentric moves, Brando had his lines written on the diaper of the baby with whom he shared a scene. At one point, he even pitched the idea of delivering a voiceover portraying his character, Jor-El, as a bagel, reasoning that no one really knows what Kryptonians look like. Fortunately, Donner stood firm and steered the project away from this unusual vision. Brando's difficulties escalated during his work on Apocalypse Now, a film infamous for its troubled production. Amidst a backdrop of severe weather damaging costly sets and lead actor Martin Sheen suffering a heart attack, Brando made an unexpected entrance. Having long struggled with his weight, an issue that critics had noted since the 1960s, Brando arrived on set significantly overweight. Despite promising director Francis Ford Coppola he would slim down to play Colonel Kurtz, a character meant to be lean and consumed by the jungle environment. To compensate for Brando's size, costumes were dark and lighting was deliberately dimmed to mask his figure. Brando's commitment to the role was unusual. He showed up for about 3 weeks of filming, a schedule that earned him a hefty $1 million weekly pay. Remarkably, he hadn't read the source material, Art of Darkness, which Coppola had requested. This led to lengthy discussions between the two, causing production delays. Because Brando's contract paid more for extended filming, he often encouraged Coppola to take time exploring the character together. Though unplanned, this approach ultimately contributed to creating one of cinema's most iconic and enigmatic portrayals. In 1980, Brando appeared in The Formula, a film that was critically panned. For this role, he innovated by using an earpiece to receive his lines, rather than his characteristic off-camera cue cards. The convenience fit neatly with his character's hearing impairment, but unfortunately his performance did not impress, and earned him his first Golden Raspberry Award nomination. Shortly afterward, Brando announced his retirement from acting, though it lasted only 9 years. He made a significant comeback in 1989 with a dry white season, motivated by the film's commitment to social change. This marked a meaningful return, highlighting Brando's enduring passion for projects with deeper social impact. Now let's dive into the chapter of Marlon Brando's life, often dubbed his "I don't give an F" era, a real turning point where he boldly embraced his own rules. During this time, Brando took roles in a variety of films. One standout was The Freshman, where he brilliantly portrayed a caricature of Vito Corleone, showing flashes of his timeless talent. He also delivered solid performances in a couple of Johnny Depp films. However, this era wasn't without its lows. Brando earned a Razzie for The Island of Dr. Moreau and was nominated for 2 others, marking a period filled with both questionable choices and memorable moments. His on-set behavior became notoriously unconventional, especially during his collaborations with Johnny Depp on The Island of Dr. Moreau and The Score. Brando's final feature film, which unfortunately showcased some of his worst professional traits. Johnny Depp recalled that during Don Juan de Marco, working with Brando was both challenging and hilarious. Brando was in full prankster mode, turning the set into a playground of laughter. At one point, Depp gifted him an electronic fart machine, leading Brando to joyfully exclaim, "I found God!" Their shared love of mischievous humor made for some genuinely funny moments. But the tone shifted when they worked on The Island of Dr. Moreau. Brando continued using his novel method of receiving lines through an earpiece instead of traditional cue cards, a technique that brought some bizarre moments. His earpiece occasionally picked up stray radio frequencies, leading him to repeat police dispatches mid-scene. As co-star David Thewlis reminisced, it wasn't uncommon for Brando to suddenly announce, "There's a robbery at Woolworth's," breaking the immersion completely. Screenwriter Ron Hutchinson revealed that Brando often feuded with the cast and crew, refusing cooperation and spending long hours secluded in his air-conditioned trailer when his presence was required on camera. Tensions flared between him and co-star Val Kilmer. Brando even demanded that production be halted to rewrite his character's story. In a bizarre twist, he wanted his character to remove his hat in the climactic scene, revealing he was actually a dolphin. While that idea didn't make the final cut, some eccentric choices did, including the character wearing an ice bucket on his head. Production itself became chaotic. At one point, the fired director donned makeup resembling one of the film's mutant background characters just to monitor the set incognito. This film solidified its reputation as one of Brando's worst. However, in a brighter chapter, The Score saw him acting alongside heavyweights Robert De Niro and Edward Norton in what would be his cinematic swan song. Yet, even here, Brando's difficult reputation persisted. Director Frank Oz, known for his work as Miss Piggy from 1976 to 2001, bore the brunt of Brando's notorious antics. Brando cheekily dubbed Oz Miss Piggy and stubbornly dismissed directions at times. It fell to De Niro to step in as a peacemaker and guide Brando through scenes during tense moments. Additionally, Brando's comfort on set was unconventional. He often performed scenes clad only in underwear since his shots were primarily from the waist up, and the temperature soared. In his final scene, Brando refused to On July 1st, 2004, the world lost Marlon Brando, who passed away due to respiratory failure in a California hospital. In his final years, he battled obesity, a condition that brought numerous health complications. Despite these struggles, his legacy remains monumental. His name continually surfaces in conversations about the greatest actors ever. Yet it's hard not to wonder about the heights he might have reached had it not been for his off-screen challenges and the choices he made throughout his career. Brando's immense natural talent was undeniable, so why did he take the path he did? The answer is layered. Take his well-known reluctance to memorize his lines. To many, this might have seemed lazy or indifferent. But for Brando, reciting memorized lines felt artificial. He believed the dialogue should mirror real conversation, unfolding naturally as people think and search for the right words in the moment. To him, genuine speech included pauses, hesitations, and the mental effort behind constructing thoughts. Anything else sounded to Brando like a children's nursery rhyme, something as stiff and artificial as "Mary Had a Little Lamb." This philosophy permeated his approach to acting, but also explained some of his infamous on-set behaviors and his willingness to take on less inspired film projects. By the 1960s and again in the 1990s, Brando's passion for acting had waned. During the 60s, he grew deeply involved in political activism and was increasingly consumed by personal turmoil, which led to disillusionment with his craft. Acting no longer felt sacred to him. It became a means to an end, primarily a way to earn money. This outlook helps explain his multi-picture deals in the 60s and the questionable roles he accepted in the 90s, a decade marked by further chaos in his personal life. Brando's off-screen life was fraught with controversy, making it difficult to separate the man from the myth. Over time, he fathered at least 11 children with various partners, complicating his personal narrative. One particularly publicized court case involved Brando pleading for leniency on behalf of his son, an episode that underscored the turbulent nature of his later years. In the 90s, his career did not hold the same importance for him as it once had. However, it would be inaccurate to say he didn't love acting. Rather, he grappled with the tension between his craft and the industry surrounding it. In his own view, some of his finest work went largely unnoticed, such as his compelling performance in Burn. Similarly, the emotional toll he endured during Last Tango in Paris left him reluctant to subject himself to such exhausting roles again. Despite all this, his name alone carried significant weight. Studios and filmmakers were eager to have him on board just for the prestige or the opportunity to collaborate with him. As Christopher Reeve poignantly remarked, it was a tragedy that audiences and makers alike sometimes cared more about Brando's fame than the quality of his performances. Let's wrap up on a lighter note. When promoting the 2001 film The Score, a reporter tried to arrange an interview with Marlon Brando. Instead of a direct response, he received a fax that read, "Marlon Brando is unavailable, signed simply as Dr. Tim G." That was one of Brando's 2 English Mastiffs, who stayed with him at home. Even toward the end, his playful and whimsical sense of humor remained alive. That's about it for now. Thanks so much for watching. We hope you enjoyed this glimpse into Marlon Brando's behind-the-scenes quirks and challenges. What are some of your favorite Brando moments? Drop them in the comments below. If you liked the video, please hit like and subscribe, and be sure to check out our Patreon for more content and some great perks. Until next time, take care and have a great day.